AFT-CPA elected 3 women of color president: Lily Escocen Garcia, Latino; Vice President Rebecca Pringle, African American; Secretary Treasurer Princess Moss. Lily Garcia became a lunchroom aide after graduation from high school. Then she got a job as an aide in Head Start. And the teacher said, "You're wonderful with these children. You need to go to college and become a teacher." And she did. And she also became a union activist. Rebecca Pringle was a science teacher in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania for 30 years and was Teacher of the Year in one of those years. Princess Moss was a music teacher in Utah, also African American. And you know what those ladies said that they want? First of all, they want Arne Duncan, the Secretary of Education, to resign. They want the federal government to play an important role in saving our schools from cuts and closings. The president of the AFT is Randi Weingarten. Last year, she was out there in front of the SRC meeting leading a rally of parents and school workers saying, "Don't close Philadelphia schools." They were protesting the closure of 6 Philadelphia schools. Schools closed anyway. Teachers' unions have been targeted as the cause of students' low achievement. But the truth is, in the states that don't have teacher contracts, the student achievement is lowest in the United States of America. Teaching conditions are the learning conditions for students. They're both the same. Could the unions be doing more? Of course! Of course they could be doing more. If the unions, just think, they are representing more than 4 million members. Suppose every teacher, every member reached out to their parents, in their school community, and built a coalition to fight in the struggle for quality schools, to have discussions on what is best for our schools. Can you imagine what an improvement we would have? And that's where it needs to go. I have to add one person's name. A leader in the struggle for public education has been Marian Wright Edelman.
Oh, yes.
She has devoted her entire life to improving education, starting with preschool programs in the 1960s, Get Set and Head Start, and today she is leading the Children's Defense Fund in its campaign to end the school-to-prison pipeline. The ACLU is involved in cases in New York City, Chicago, and Texas. So you say, school-to-prison pipeline, what's that? Well, the school-to-prison pipeline refers to zero-tolerance school discipline policies and practices that push students out of the classroom, and they push out the most at-risk students: African Americans, Latino, low low-income and special education students. They're pushed out of the classroom through suspension and expulsion and into the juvenile justice system and unemployment. Because if you've got a record, go out here and try to get a job. You wonder why are these guys standing on the corner with the 40 in their hand and cursing and carrying on. Okay, ending right. Educators know that students have to buy into rules and regulations in order to develop self-discipline, just like adults do. If you don't buy in and you're not a part of the laws, then you don't respect the laws. Students must understand that self-discipline can lead them to a better quality of life. The women I have mentioned tonight are just a few women who have inspired thousands.
See you later, everybody. Good luck with the struggle, ladies.
And gentlemen.
And gentlemen, yes.
Thank you, Rosita, for that definite dynamic history lesson. That was very informative and very educational. Before we proceed with the next portion of our program, which is questions and comments.
I don't have any prepared notes. I will talk plenty. I would be curious to hear from the audience what you would like to know about, because that's what I'm hearing.
You mentioned your work with a caucus. Can you talk a little bit about what the caucus is and what it does and why you guys started it?
Sure. So, like I said, it's about a year old. And the Caucus of Working Educators is a rank and file movement. We have about 200 members at this point. About 130 of them are full PFT members, either current or retired, and the rest are community supporters, mostly parents who feel dedicated to the work. Prior to becoming a caucus member, I was a member of Teacher Action Group, which is a small activist network also based in Philadelphia. In 2012, I designed a website campaign called The Faces of the Layoffs, which was when the school district laid off about 4,000 employees due to budget shortages. So just an example of like some of the work that we do. And those of us in that group recognized and started to learn actually when Chicago, Karen Lewis's caucus, which is called CORE, took over and their union leadership, so they were a rank and file caucus for a while, then they ran for leadership in one, which sort of had a ripple effect nationally through the AFT network. That was the first time I'd ever heard of a union caucus. I didn't know what it was. I don't come from a labor background. I didn't even know what the phrase labor background meant until I became a union member. And sometime after that, so it was all really foreign to me. But when we learned about the work that they were doing and how they were energizing their membership, there were sort of a network of us that were building reps in the PFT system or met each other at activist events, and sort of started to coalesce around this idea of, oh, well, all you really have to do is pick a name and that's it, like you just get started. So we started about a year ago, and what do? We have a 7-point platform, but in a nutshell, I always say we're seeking to energize the rank and file and get people to be more proactive about big issues. We have social events, we have forums and panels, but really it's about a lot of like on-the-ground activism in schools and getting people to feel comfortable and empowered to talk about the big picture stuff, whether that's in their buildings, whether that's on their block. Teachers tend to be rule followers, which is not a bad thing, but it's hard. I think it's harder to get teachers to step up to the plate in that way because we expect, not unreasonably, that like the things outside of our classroom will be taken care of for us, and that's increasingly not the case. So.
again, let's try this again. Before we proceed into the next portion, which is the question and answers, questions and comments, I just wanted to recognize a couple guests that we have here with us tonight. One of which is the Executive Director of Jobs with Justice, Gwen Snyder. Recognize an advocate for the public, for the Philadelphia Coalition Advocating for Public Schools, Carol Kalimnik.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
That's okay.
And I would also
You
like
should
to
talk about your victory today.
I would also,
What?
What?
Sorry.
that's okay. I would also like to recognize a founding member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee
All right.
and a long-term activist as far as for public education, union activism, and civil rights, Debbie Amos Bell.
All right.
And troublemaker. And I want to thank Sam, who accompanied his wife to be here with us tonight as well. So thank you. Now we're going to move into our questions and comments. So I have right now, I have Ken, I have Diane, Carol, Jimmy Wayne, and Mike Samoian. All right. I'm sorry if I don't know everyone's name, so forgive me kind of if I have to ask where we're going to begin. So if you want to be added to the list of questioners, commenters, please feel free to put your hand up. Ken.
In 1967, there was a demonstration. We've been reading about the PFT, Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, which had changed over from a past union at the time. What I'm wondering about is, and what I think a lot of people might need to know, is that there was a progressive caucus operating back at that time, I think, in the union, and a black caucus also. I'm wondering the types of coalitions, the types of coordination that is going on presently between the progressive caucus types and the black caucus now and back then in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. If someone can sort of unify that between the two speakers and any teachers.
I was actually just meeting with PFT leadership earlier today, and the Black Caucus still exists in Philadelphia. I did not know it still existed until it came up in the meeting today, and several people who work for the PFT full-time mentioned, yes, it still exists, there are a few members, and they said it's not very active right now. So, I mean, my understanding as somebody who knew nothing, but now I know a lot, is that at present day, until working educators became an active caucus, that it was pretty much a one caucus town, that the collective bargaining team, who are currently the elected leadership of the PFT, were the one party.
Thank you both. I know we have a list, and we're going to, based upon what someone just said from the audience, I wanted Gwen, before she had to leave, to speak about her recent success that she's had. Gwen Snyder, the Executive Director for Jobs with Justice.
Hey guys. I think I actually know pretty much everyone in this room. Carl, do you want to hand them out once I finish preaching it? Yeah, so we had a really exciting success yesterday. So we've been fighting to make mega nonprofits like Penn and Jefferson, which claim charitable tax exemptions, to pay their fair share towards public schools and city services. So we, in the past month, we got all, we haven't gotten Milton Street yet, but we've got the other 5 mayoral candidates in the primary to commit to pilots in 2016 if they're elected. And yesterday we got a resolution in favor of pilots passed by 15 to 1 through council, which is very exciting. There's definitely a we. I think about half the people in this room are working on that, so it's definitely not my victory, it's our victory. Yes, so we're really excited. One thing that I'll highlight for folks, the reason we're not hearing much from you, Ken, or any of these guys in City Hall right now is that they're up in Harrisburg trying their best to start moving a constitutional amendment that would make it impossible to make these guys pay their fair share. That will probably hit the ballot in November. It's, to get a constitutional amendment passed, they need a popular referendum. So we'll be fighting very hard against that. We're going to keep pushing against UPenn, which I'm sure anyone living in the area knows. They're encroaching, they are not good to the neighborhood around them, and they are certainly not giving back to the historical neighborhood of West Philadelphia. And we have a petition to Amy Gutman, the president of UPenn, asking her to start paying pilots, even if Mary Nutter, our dear friend, hasn't really moved on that yet. It could be a source of tens of millions of dollars in revenue every year. And Mary Nutter has decided he told the Inquirer today that it's unsustainable, which is amazing. This is the guy who went to sell PW, right? Well, unsustainable is you killed the goose and made the golden egg, so unsustainable it is.
University cultivates goose of themselves.
Yeah, exactly, that's his idea. So anyway, we're fighting it hard. Our next step is we're going to try and get the mayoral candidates to sign a pledge saying specifically that they're going to institute, that they will, if elected, institute at least 33% of what these guys would pay in nonprofit or in property taxes towards, again, public schools and city services. So thank you for giving me a soapbox. I'm afraid I have to cut out early. Also, I think somebody in the crowd, two people in the crowd who deserve a big round of applause, who are big J with J workers. Carl and Diane. So I apologize, I had to run, but thank you guys so much for having me. Carl, do you mind if I run off and review the petitions? All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
My purse sings.
No, thank you for that announcement.
Thanks.
Diane, you're next on the.
When you were saying about what your caucus addresses, the day-to-day things, the big picture things, I think, for you to use, what are some of those, for example?
I would say the biggest campaign that we're involved in right now is facilitating families who are interested in opting their children out of standardized testing. So if you're familiar, the law in Pennsylvania is that any family can claim a quote-unquote religious exemption to standardized exams, and they just have to submit a letter to the school district, and then their children don't have to take them. And there's no proof of the religious exemption required, so some people say, I consider it cruel and unusual punishment, and my religion adjusts that. And so they, you just send the letter and you're done, basically. This information is also provided by the school district. You're actually required to send out information about how to opt out, but it may not be translated, or parents may miss the little paragraph at the end of the form. So we've really been advocating to get the information out there just so that families are informed about the implications of testing for their children, and how there's a really easy way, if they have a problem with it, to speak out against it by opting out their kids. So again, it's on a very personal level, like what matters for you and your family, but it also has huge statewide and national implications.
Right.
Good, very good. Carol?
Actually, I'm going to follow up on the opt-out because I think that's really important, and maybe not everybody fully understands what standardized testing is doing, and how teachers' evaluations are based on it, as well as the test results do not come in a timely fashion. But could you also talk about that maybe a little more, since I know that's the campaign, and also the role of the Keystones, which are going to be really coming up in 2017?
Sure. So the Keystone exams are the new, they're very similar in format to the old high school exams, but high school students need to take one in algebra, literature, and biology. A few years ago, the state legislature, in their infinite wisdom, decided that they were also going to be graduation requirements. And starting for the class of 2017, which is the group of sophomores, most kids take them as sophomores, who are testing this May. This is their first time taking the exams. based on previous test scores, not just in Philadelphia, but really statewide, there are a lot of students who are not passing all 3 exams, especially the biology, which is more content-based than skills-based. If you don't pass it at the end of your year of biology, you're a lot less likely to pass it when you retake 1 or 2 years later. And so kids are really facing that harsh reality. There is a sort of computer-based project that they can do as a loophole to maybe get their cert at the end, but nobody knows what that looks like because nobody's seen it yet, because nobody's like, do you understand what I'm saying? Right, the track is being laid like as it's being figured out. There is significant resistance both on the part of families, but also on the part of some legislatures to remove it as a graduation requirement. And I've heard a number of people I trust who are sort of in the know that think that actually it will collapse after this first set of students take the tests and don't pass, and then all of a sudden families all across the state realize, holy crap, what's going on? It probably won't drop. That testing window is May 13th to May 27th. I'm testing coordinator at my school. So probably sometime after May 27th, watch for the headlines. You know, that's what I'm hoping for, honestly.
And also after that, like we've spent as a state over $8 million on these tests, and yet districts are claiming that they don't have enough money for instruction, and all this money is going into paying for the test, which goes to a British company called Pearson. And then what happens is Pearson sells all the paraphernalia that people need to prepare for these tests. And like in districts that are so strapped like Philadelphia, there's no money. I mean, even if you think it's a bad idea, there's still no money and there's no time during the day to schedule in these classes that would help students, you know, get remediation and pass the test.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for your response.
Could I just say a little thing about the tests too? The teachers don't actually grade those tests.
Oh, no.
They send them away to like these factory type places where all you need is a bachelor's degree. You pay $10 an hour to grade these tests. So the teacher can't really use it to say, oh, I see that Johnny is weak in the genetics part of biology. I'll have to work with him on that or something like that.
Yeah, you get the test scores right at the end of the school year, so it's once you're done with your students. I mean, they have never, those kinds of exams have never been, it's never been suggested that they would be useful to teachers. The state uses them, has used them for a long time as a way to judge schools as a whole. Obviously, personally, I'm not for that either, but I can accept that more than the notion of tying this exam designed by the state, you know, distributed without any input from local communities and what the learning is like in each environment. I'm very uncomfortable with making that a graduation requirement.
We have Jimmy Wayne, followed by Mike, and then Dave. Jimmy Wayne.
Present teacher. I would just like to say that I think when I'm in a gathering like this, I think of some of the constructive information that has come out over the years that has been ignored by most people. Here I'm thinking of some of the documentaries like the history of the Roosevelt era, when there were experiments being conducted in public housing, employment, education. Each of those areas in particular weigh concretely upon any of us who either, I don't work in the public education field, but I'm affected by what occurs within that area. And I hear the complaints of people. I was a social worker until I retired and a salesman. So I hear the complaints on the radio, public radio, on television, in conversations. And there's a surplus of complaining without any pursuit of information about why the schools don't work, why public housing is not working. All of these are factors that impact on whether there is going to be a correction in any of these areas, or if we can just move past it, and maybe somewhere down the line some brilliant teachers, scholars, will come in and save the day, just like you're going to get a new draft choice for a professional football team. And it ain't happened. It wasn't designed to happen. And I know I'm sitting in a room full of people who are very bright and who grasp the terminology, the technology, but I think that many of the people, especially in the inner city, where I have spent a considerable amount of time here and back in my hometown in Pittsburgh, going through the same thing, where didn't you hear somebody tell you that the ark is loaded and there's no capacity for additional passengers, and check with us next year this time, as they slam the doors shut. And it's short, other than some truly dedicated people, small numbers, there is no real expression of concern over the condition of the public schools that most of us attended. In fact, I suggest trying to find some that are still open and functioning. And that's disheartening to me, because I see that I lived through the conditions of the Depression era, and I didn't know that it was any different from anything before I got on board. But now, people have moved far beyond that, and the masses of the people are not asking, how can we correct this? They're saying, well, they tell me my child isn't going to graduate from school, and these teachers are getting a big paycheck, and they're hearing anecdotal information that is inflammatory. So there would be no reason to believe that if I get some of my neighbors and we pressure the school board where I live in one of the 67 counties where I have worked, something's going to change. It's not going to change. If we can huff and puff and blow the house in, but unless there's an explanation of what has occurred, what is occurring, and what is possible to make the changes necessary to teach our children reading, writing, and arithmetic, and critical thinking. And I go back to the feeling that I got, a positive feeling, when I saw the Roosevelt years, and I saw the advocates for public education who were being filmed in the 1930s and 40s. And I haven't witnessed anything of that sort now, as I've gone around to the counties in Pennsylvania and beyond. So I'm just putting it out there to see if there's somebody who can help me see if there is